My favorite kind of people are the ones that have a bad attitude. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I am really excited to talk to you about a new documentary that is coming out. It's hitting the festival circuit. It will eventually be out in commercial release. I know that. It's Bad Attitude, The Art of Spain Rodriguez. He is an artist, a writer, someone who has had a cultural impact, an incredible man. And I have the filmmaker behind that movie here. Before we get to that, I want to do a quick plug for our event, Award This. If you are not aware, there are these award shows around award season. You know about the Oscars. You've probably heard of the Independent Spirit Awards, but I believe that truly independent films do not get the credit, acknowledgement, and the recognition that they deserve. I'm talking about smaller indie films of all genre types. Pop culture documentaries, music documentaries, indie sci-fi, indie horror, indie comedy. These movies are virtually ignored when it comes to award season. And that's why I created Award This. And Award This year is going to be a little challenging. We're actually doing it at a drive-in. On Saturday, April 10th in Tustin, California, we're doing a drive-in event where we're actually putting on the awards and we're filming it. And then we're going to show it to you on Sunday, April 18th. You'll be able to see it in a very special virtual event that I can't wait for you to check out. You can go to awardthis.com for more info, but we put together a little teaser for you. And this is courtesy of my friend John Bailey.
In a world where every award show is a fucking Zoom call, comes Award This. From your pals at Film Threat comes a celebration of true independent films. Join us on April 10th at a socially distanced drive-in. In fact, I'll be there as your announcer, wearing a hazmat suit and inside a giant Bacta tank. And prepare for a virtual award show unlike any other ever in the history of mankind. Or awards kind. Award This 2021. It's happening, whether you like it or not. Drive-in live event on Saturday, April 10th. Virtual award show on Sunday, April 18th. Get tickets now at awardthis.com.
Well, I hope to see you there. I hope you'll join us for the virtual event, which is a live event. We're all watching at once and talking to each other and participating. So check it out. And now, without further ado, let's talk to Susan Stern of Bad Attitude, The Art of Spain Rodriguez. Susan, I was so moved by your film. I was telling you before we started, I am such a fan of underground comics, everything from like Zap Comics and people like Art Spiegelman, Robert Crumb, so many that have had an influence on me, just having read like everything from Raw to Zap and whatnot. I mean, look, I love my superhero comics, but your underground comics are the place that really ideas flourished. Ideas about politics, about religion, sex. These comics are more adult, and I say adult in the sense that I don't mean they're pornographic. I mean they're adult in the sense that they dealt in the realm of larger ideas. And your documentary is just amazing. I know it's so personal because I mean you were married to Spain. You have a child together, and so that means you're unbiased. But in all the best ways. So how did the footage that you compiled really from, I cannot believe, like really like him as a young man early in his career, before you even met him, if I'm seeing it correctly, photos and video and whatnot. How did you, one, compile all this, media to be able to make this documentary, and two, convince him to be in it? Because you open the documentary even with this like conversation where you're talking about doing a documentary in a sense. It kind of breaks the fourth wall in all the best ways. You're very brutally honest up front. And I'm so sorry, this is such a long-winded introduction, but tell me how you got Spain to want to do this?
Well, thank you, Chris. So first of all, I want to say how happy I am to be here, how much I share your passion for truly independent film, which people give lip service to, but thanks to people like you and Film Threat and Slamdance is actually out there. Spain, the wonderful thing about Spain, there's controversial comics he drew. He drew very erotic pictures of women, but he was a huge supporter of women, and he was a huge supporter of me. And he would joke about whose fame curve, that's what he called it, the fame curve, his fame curve or my fame curve was going up more at any given moment. And so he supported me as a filmmaker, as an investigative reporter, which I was before I was a filmmaker. And so he wanted me to make a film about him.
I thought that was the thing that was really striking about the documentary is you include yourself in it. You talk about how you're feminist, how you grew up and your ideals. And on the surface, I guess on paper, you would look at you in Spain and go, oh, that's not going to go well. That's going to clash. But truthfully, he was just very brutally honest. I mean, there's a shocking, and you show this because you show a lot of his artwork in it, but a work that I was unaware of, that I didn't want to go into the details. You should see the movie. You should see the movie at a film festival or however you plan to see it. But kind of a shocking event that is a true story from Spain's childhood that really was surprising even to you. But somehow that contrast of I just feel he was brutally honest about his feelings. And I think that you were very accepting about that this is how he felt about things. And part of the documentary is your defense of his work. Can you talk about that? Did it ever cause any problems for you at all?
It was very hard to make this documentary. It took years. I know we documentarians tend to brag about how long it took us to make things, but this film took 8 years to make. Part of it was the struggle that I went through in dealing with the most difficult things that he did, the most controversial work. I've got to say, we put it all in. I strove to put the most controversial work of Spain's in this film. So it's there. I strove to bring in other people than myself, feminist critics, other cultural critics. It's a racially diverse and diverse age-wise and diverse by field group of people that are in the film, everyone from outlaw bikers to police officers to artists and writers are in the film commenting on Spain's work. So I really strove to put myself in it, but also put other people in it. I like to make films that are a safe space for conversation. And I think we need that.
Well, why is it that, and your film really deals with this head on, it's so brutally honest. That's why, I mean, you can see the care that you really put into this, and you include yourself in a way that represents, I believe, a certain segment of the audience that may have issues, and you deal with it. And why is it we're so unable today to have these conversations? Also, I have to compliment you, the inclusion of your daughter and showing Spain's relationship with your daughter is so beautiful. I mean, they're talking at one point about like drawing feet and the correct way to do it. And he's mentoring her in such a beautiful way. It's he's a mentor, a father, but it's just, I really think that maybe things that other documentarians might not have included, you included those things. It was very, very important, I believe, that those were included. But why can't we have this conversation now? Why can't we? Is it that social media is so brief that people just cut to the reaction? They're triggered by things and they cut to the reaction rather than having a longer conversation that is more nuanced, which you're able to do, say, in the form of a documentary.
Yeah, I think it is hard for us all to talk about things now. I think it is because we all are people, we all are trying to be honest. And I think we're trying to be good. I'm trying to be good. I want to be good. I want to say the right thing. I want to think the right thing. And that's why we enjoyed calling the film Bad Attitude. And that's why we wanted to celebrate Spain's bad attitude in a way, in a light way. We wanted to give some space to being bad, to not having all the right answers, to not always saying the right thing or doing the right thing. So, I think this film and other independent films can give that space to badness.
Well, I think what I love about the film is that it explores issues that we're dealing with today, that we're challenged with. It seems very timely, in the sense that we're having trouble even having the ability to have these conversations. And that's what I've always admired about so many of the artists that you included in the documentary, basically colleagues of Spain's that commented that these are all artists that deal with things that are difficult and that are, that are challenging. I even think like even something as simple as like, is it Robert Williams? I mean, he's in there, and like he famously would do these paintings of naked women on tacos, right? Like, or naked women on food and cars, and very, very like, I mean, elaborate paintings. I mean, I wonder, is this the kind of art that can even exist today? I'm concerned about like who, Spain obviously had an influence not just on colleagues, but also on the next generation, your daughter in among that group. And will they have the freedom to be able to do what Spain did and, talk about things that were so personal? And you put it right out there by showing the art and by showing it. I mean, you show the frames, you show the words. I mean, in this sort of limited animation that is a great way to feature his work if you don't have the actual comic books. But I'm concerned about your daughter's generation and will they have that freedom at a time when everything is policed from ideas to language. I really have, I mean, even me with Film Threat, when I look back on things that I did in Film Threat back in the day, I think, oh, I would be canceled if I said those words, or if these things, I mean, the magazine was around in the 80s and the 90s, the print magazine. And I am just concerned about our future artists, and will there be more artists like Spain that feel that freedom and that like, I don't give a fuck attitude to be able to express themselves?
I'm actually having a moment of not being worried about it. I have such faith in, I've become an old person, so I say things like young people today, but it's true. That's the reality. I'm an old person and I have a lot of faith in young people today. I think they have enormous emotional intelligence, and I think they're wrestling with things, and it's painful. And but they're going to find new ways. They're going to find whole new ways to be free. They are finding whole new ways to be free. And I think if you look at alternative comics today, they're finding very surprising ways to be free and to be different and to push boundaries that we didn't even know were there. So I think they're going to work it out. And I think what I'm happy to have been able to do is to show the history in this film, because this film starts with World War II comics and talks about the suppression of comics in the 1950s, EC comics, and then underground comics. And it gives the history of where the current generation is going to go.
Well, it's interesting. I love the history that you included as well. And it's funny. I don't remember who it was. Was it Susie Bright or someone who said in the doc that they would put the underground comics in underground, newspapers? Didn't realize like, oh, you could just make a whole comic book of just, underground comics and stories and ideas and whatnot in things like Zap. So I think that revelation because I see that the artists that I've always admired are the self-starters, people like yourself, people like Spain, who no one hired Spain to do a comic. He just decided to do that. No one hired you to make this documentary. You decided to do it. And I think independent creators, and I say this as a fellow old person,
Yeah.
this is a fellow old person, and I do have concerns about our freedom to be able to express these ideas without fear of, say, being ostracized, even for thinking or discussing these ideas. I feel like Spain did that and pushed the limits in all the best ways, which is why I think it's so admirable that you seemingly, on the surface would be, this is not someone that you would be involved with or even have as a friend, and you just gelled. So the inclusion of your relationship, I just think is very beautiful and makes such a great point in the doc. So it's in that rare personal documentary where it adds so much to the layers of the doc. But
Thank you.
I'm curious what your daughter's in the documentary. She's a big part of it. What her reaction is to seeing this. It's an amazing, just testament to your tribute to her father, and how, say, the audiences that have seen the film. I mean, we're not seeing movies in theaters as we should be. I think soon we're going to be getting back to that later this year, but how people responded to the documentary, having seen it. I mean, obviously, huge stamp of approval, Slamdance, and Slamdance is like truly indie films play Slamdance. But what have been reactions to the doc?
Well, we're getting a really great reaction. I'm really, really moved. Nora, first of all, Nora Rodriguez, who is a New York arts educator and animator. Her animation is in the film. She's in the film. She guided me throughout making the film, and she loves the film. So I'm really happy. Another thing I wanted to say, just to pick up on something you noted before, and because Film Threat is an audience of people who love film and people who make films, one of the things I'm proud of in the film is the way we handled the graphics. I was really fortunate to work with a New York motion artist, Noel Honig, who tackled the problem of translating comics, which are a vertical art form, into film, which is a horizontal art form. And this was a real problem. And he also worked with all the photographs and the graphics, I think, in a really fresh way. I think for people who study film, and I did a lot of studying film graphics to find Noel to do our graphics, that's an exciting piece of the film. We have animation from Nora. We have animation that were done by other animators. We have the motion graphic and incredible animated title sequence that Noel Honig did. And it's just an interesting study in how film can work with graphics.
I didn't even think about that. Comic books go this way.
Yeah.
Movies are like 16 by 9, right? Like,
yeah, it was horrible. It was like, what do? We get to crop everything? And Noel came up with a really brilliant way to think about it. He said, when we're telling a story, when we're using the comics to tell a story, then we're going to move the camera on the comics. We're going to go in close and we're going to move. When we're looking at the art as an artifact, as a piece of art hanging on a museum wall, then we're going to let it be an artifact. We're going to move back and we're not going to crop, and we're going to see it as art. And so using that framework, he worked with over 300 pieces of art that were in the film. And we had, my associate producer made this database that we used that had every piece of art in the film. And then one of the other nightmares of making the film was, once we figured out what was going to be in the film, because Spain produced tens of thousands of pieces of art, and we couldn't scan them all at high definition, would have taken years. So then once we knew what was going to be in the film, we had to go back and scan everything at 4K resolution during the pandemic, with the art in one place, and all of us wearing masks, and it was an effort.
Well, I'm ecstatic that people are going to see it as part of the Slamdance Film Festival, which you can go to slamdance.com and you can get a festival badge for $10. It's like sort of a limited window of time to watch all the films at Slamdance. It's $10 for like a streaming service where all the films are amazing. And this one in particular is just so remarkable. Susan, thank you so much for joining us on the Film Star podcast. Now, there's an Instagram that's run by your daughter. So look up Bad Attitude, the Art of Spain Rodriguez, and Google the website. I'll put it in the notes on YouTube so people can find it. And I'll tag you on social media when we promote this episode. But you need to come back, Susan. If you wouldn't mind coming back, let's have a longer conversation when the movie comes out in commercial release. Because I really want to delve into this with you. When people can buy the film on iTunes, please come back and talk to us.
I would love to do that. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I was just so moved, blown away, and just so like ecstatic that your husband's work was featured in this documentary in a way that is such an incredible tribute. Thank you so much.
Thank you.